Hello and welcome to another Filmcast Without a Cause. I'm Jacob Rosdale.
And I'm Patrick Boberg. Together we're the co-hosts, but if you want to be the tri-host, you can join us by leaving a comment on Filmcast Without a Cause or any of the mediums out there that we list on the site. Check it out, and join us next week.
Pat, did you watch the big sports ball game last night?
Yes, the Lights Out Bowl or the Power Outage Bowl, the Superbowl.
I
Yes,
imagine
did.
you were a big fan of the San Francisco Giants. And
the San Francisco 49ers. Yes, I'm not a huge fan, but I did live there, and that's where my allegiances were in the game. But I don't think anybody who's tuning in cares about a few days late talking about recapping the game. They might care about the trailers that were in the show.
I have to be honest. One of the reasons, I'm one of those non-sports people who still watches the Super Bowl. And I don't do it because I love beer commercials or Beyonce, but I do watch it because even though I like to avoid trailers, I still get excited when they show new footage in the Super Bowl. So
yeah, do you have any memories of Super Bowl trailers? Because I always think of The Fifth Element. I remember seeing that and being like, this is going to be the best movie ever.
I remember being in college and just because they announced that the first peak of the Hulk, Ang Lee's Hulk movie, was going to be during the Super Bowl. And I remember just bugging people because I had to be around for the commercials in case the Hulk preview showed. And if you remember, like when the Hulk showed in that first Super Bowl promo, it wasn't fully rendered. It's still, he's still in the final movie. Doesn't look good to today's standards, but he looked especially green and Shrekky in those Super Bowl ads.
I don't remember that at all. So you were down from the moment you saw that trailer then?
Well, I was I was pre-sold because it's like Ang Lee doing Hulk.
Yeah.
It was going to be huge. I like Hulk fine, but I definitely understand why people hate that movie. But I really wanted to see, get my first glimpse of the Hulk at the Super Bowl. But
well, then fast forwarding to today, there were, I think, 6. Let me just list them off. 6 trailers in last night's Super Bowl. We're recording on Monday. There was Oz the Great and the Powerful, Iron Man 3, Oblivion, Fast and the Furious 6, Snitch, World War Z, Star Trek in the Darkness, and The Lone Ranger.
I also saw an Identity Thief preview.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well,
but
yes.
that shouldn't even count because that comes out this week maybe.
Okay, well then, out of the trailers you saw, what did any of them make you want to see the film, or just cast you aside as forget that film?
Well, I don't think anything sold. World War Z was basically a shortened version of the trailer.
Yep.
Same with Oz, the Great and Powerful. I was really excited for the Fast and the Furious 6 Super Bowl trailer because I thought, because they've only been calling it on IMDb and on the blogs, they've been calling it the Fast and the Furious 6, and I was like, when they debut the first footage, they're going to reveal the stupid name. Because if there's one thing you can count about with the Fast and the Furious franchise is that the names will keep getting stupider. From Fast and the Furious to Too Fast, Too Furious to Tokyo Drift to just Fast and Furious to Fast 5. They haven't had any logic or consistency. And so I was a little disappointed when it was just Fast and Furious 6. But I think it was a pretty effective, stupid Fast and Furious 6 Super Bowl trailer.
So you were expecting like 6 Fast and Furious-ers or something?
I was
like
expecting it to be Furious with the S being spelled with a 6. So it would just be Furious 6. Like Fast 5, Furious 6. That would have made my day. But
well, if I was going to pick one that totally sparked my interest, it would be the little glimpse at Iron Man 3.
Oh, yeah.
I've been riding the fence on if I should see anything or just cut all the trailers out of my life with Iron Man 3, but that little shot of the clip, it was just like a scene from Air Force One being like half blown up and people falling from the sky. I was like, that's awesome. And then when I was talking with somebody at work today, he said that his 8-year-old son was just as jazzed as I was. So that made me a little wondering, am I just an 8-year-old boy trapped in a 30-year-old's body?
If the film can have that tone of having that danger, that real threat to human life, but also a little bit of fun because you can see him sweating it out, I'm really excited for that. I think that is a lot more exciting than the sad Tony Stark we've been seeing in the trailers up to this point. Because my wife saw that Super Bowl commercial. She's like, that was good because all the other commercials were just so sad, make that movie look so sad.
Yeah.
So, no, that probably jazzed me more than Fast and Furious 6, obviously. But, and everything.
What about the Star Trek trailer? I've decided I'm just going to see any trailer that comes out for it. But I have to say that it was almost felt like the Dark Knight set in the 23rd century.
I don't know if I buy that. Just because we don't know enough about the villain. And the thing is, and I don't want to know anything. If they confirm who Benedict Cumberbatch is playing and he's an established character, I don't want to hear about it. I have my own theories, but you can go anywhere on the internet to figure out who he is. I'm hoping it's not Khan. I want them to do something a little more original than that. But
I completely agree.
But I think it's probably a 30% chance, maybe even a 40 to 50% chance that it's Khan.
I was just saying that based on the one-man wrecking crew that happens to be Cumberbatch's character, at least by the trailer. Mm-hmm. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's obviously something going on with him in that Starfleet uniform, but I don't know. We're not a trailer talk podcast, though, but with the Super Bowl, you have to make an exception because it's kind of a cool thing for a movie fan to know that millions of people are seeing what the next big summer movie is going to be. But moving on to a superhero movie that wasn't, or almost was and then wasn't. A Kickstarter was kicked off, well, appropriately enough, this past week. Pat, I think you're the one who sent the link to me, so I'm going to put the burden on you.
I don't know how this got, well, obviously I know how it got so much buzz. This is the movie that most people care about in comic book world that never got made. Well, there's movies in the 90s that were made that everybody cares about because they're hilarious, but this might have been hilariously bad in the same way. The Superman Lives movie with Tim Burton, Nick Cage, and early in its genesis, Kevin Smith was writing a version of it. And this gentleman, who I can't seem to find his name, looking over this document.
His name is John Schnepp.
John Schnepp, yes. He has been collecting all sorts of art from the film and stories, and he's trying to get money raised to make a documentary about why it never got made, and just the fantastic way that how, this is maybe bad to say, but how awful it could have been. And I'm really excited to see this. I if it comes down to the wire and he needs a few bucks, I might fork up a 20 or something just to see this thing.
Now, Schnepp is actually a guy who works in the film industry. He was the creator of an animated series that I've never seen called Metalocalypse. And based on the Kickstarter video, he has collected he has a large personal collection of design work and concept art and all sorts of miscellaneous stuff from Superman Lives. So maybe he is the guy to tell this story. I'm definitely interested in this, and especially if you've heard Kevin Smith tell his side of the story, you know that was going to be a crazy movie.
Well, if he can get the people to talk, like if he actually he wants to, if he can get to Nick Cage, if he can get to Tim Burton, then yeah. I say all hands on deck. This is going to be one that'll go down in history for the fans.
Those are pretty big ifs. I know he could probably get Kevin Smith because he has talked about it on the An Evening with Kevin Smith DVD, as well as on the How Did This Get Made podcast for Wild Wild West. Pretty big ifs. The thing that excited me the most about this is if he exceeds his goal, he wants to raise enough money to recreate scenes from Superman
that's incredible.
Lives. That made me pretty excited about the prospect of that. I have yet to ever give to a Kickstarter, but this one is kind of speaking out to me. And I think this is a story that actually could maybe, especially if they do the recreation, sustain a feature-length documentary. There was also in the news, I know I saw it on the AV Club, a Mad magazine documentary that was trying to get some Kickstarter funds. And just watching the 5-minute clip, I'm like, this is interesting, but I don't want to watch more than a couple minutes of this. But the Superman one, I definitely could go for. And in other film news, one of the big announcements this week was that Duncan Jones, director of such movies as Moon and Source Code, was hired by Warner Brothers and Legendary Pictures to direct a film based on the world of Warcraft. I think it's just called Warcraft at this point. Pat, you're a Duncan Jones fan, as am I.
Absolutely. And this is interesting because he had another movie that was going to come into development, but an Ian Fleming biopic, but I think I'd actually want to see this first.
Well, I'm of mixed opinions of it. Before we get into why I'm kind of hesitant about it, I want to clarify that I know absolutely nothing about Warcraft or the world of Warcraft. Pat, I believe you're somewhere near the same
I have
level
very
of
little history with World of Warcraft, but I've played the first version, the second version, and then cheated my way through the third. So,
well, we decided to help us make an informed decision of whether the idea of a Warcraft movie would be good or not. Let's call up Jason Burns of the Midwest Nerds podcast. He knows a lot more about video gaming and Warcraft. Let's get him on the FWOAC phone.
Hello?
Hello.
Burns, are you there?
Yeah. How's it going, guys?
It's going well, Pat.
Fantastic.
You know Burns? Yeah, all right. Now that we've all met each other. Burns, World of Warcraft, what is it?
World of Warcraft is well, I guess I can start from the very beginning. It's a massively multiplayer online game set in the fictional Warcraft universe where you play as either a member of the Alliance, which is primarily humans. There's also dwarves. They've added a bunch of other races too. Night elves, all kinds of stuff. The Draenei are now part of the Alliance. Or you can play as a member of the Horde, which is all of the traditionally ugly-looking characters, which are the orcs, the Tauren, which are like bull people. Or they added the Blood Elves so that they could have some pretty people, too. But it's basically, Horde versus Alliance, giant multiplayer online role-playing experience.
Are there clear-cut good guys and clear-cut bad guys since you can play as anyone? Or is it all shades of gray?
Well, I mean, essentially, if you're playing as a member of either faction, you're not necessarily, good guys or bad guys. In the old Warcraft games, the Horde was considered the evil, faction, and the orcs were bad guys, and the Alliance were the good guys. But, now anymore, it's just, it's different factions, and they are opposed. But really, the only legitimate evil in the World of Warcraft are all of the things you fight against as the player characters, all the non-player characters and all the bosses that you beat in dungeons. That's the real evil, and so Horde, Alliance, they're just different political factions. It's like Republicans and Democrats, basically.
Well, Jason, let me butt in. The story, obviously a movie's got to have a story here. Now, with an online role-playing game where it's populated by just people sitting at their computers, is there an actual story there at this point that they could turn into a film, or are they going to have to rely on the older versions of the game?
Surprisingly, yes. There's actually, I would say more story has happened in the Warcraft universe since World of Warcraft came out than any of the previous Warcraft games. So the World of Warcraft, the original, what a lot of players refer to as vanilla World of Warcraft, kind of picked up where Warcraft 3 and the expansion left off, specifically the Frozen Throne. I don't know if you ever played, Pat, you said you'd played some of the Warcraft games. Did you ever play Warcraft 3's expansion, the Frozen Throne?
No, I didn't. I remember using cheats to get kill the entire game in about an hour, and then I was like, that was a waste of my time. I shouldn't have done that. And then I just kind of dropped it. But right. There is a story there from the third one that's pretty strong.
Yeah. I mean, so essentially, what happened is part of the Horde. There's also a faction of undead that are part of the Horde, and they play a pretty major part in the story that sets up World of Warcraft. I'll try to make a bunch of really dense, really extended lore. I'll try to make that as bite-sized as I possibly can.
I appreciate that.
Because I could be here for literally hours, and there are some people that would be really excited about that, but most people won't. But essentially, the end of the Warcraft games, there was a kingdom in the north made of humans, and the prince essentially becomes corrupted, and he becomes this dark lich lord, which is this big leader of a faction of undead, just about takes over the world. In fact, the entire world almost becomes destroyed by this. And through the events of Warcraft 3 and its expansion, the heroes win and they drive back Arthas and what have you. But basically, World of Warcraft takes off from there. There's a faction of undead who have been freed from the Lich King, and now they're trying to find out what they are. They were previously human, now they're self-aware again, and they're like, what's going on here? And so they join the Horde, and each expansion to World of Warcraft kind of continues this story in a slightly different way. So the original World of Warcraft dealt with some of this, and then the next expansion dealt with discovering this area called the Outlands and some ancient evil that awoke there. Cataclysm was one of the biggest expansions story-wise. It dealt with an ancient dragon awakening and literally ripping the World of Warcraft almost completely apart. And so there's actually, each expansion is very story-driven and pretty story-rich, and I think there's actually a lot of material there where they could make a film, and probably a pretty interesting film.
Interesting. It sounds like it's kind of a mishmash of a lot of different fantasy things. As someone who's not a big fantasy guy, I've seen movies and I watch Game of Thrones, but I don't read books. Is there anything that you would compare it to? Is it like Lord of the Rings or Willow?
It's probably if you took. It's probably, if you had to pick one fantasy setting that it's most like, I guess in size and scope, it would probably be a lot like Lord of the Rings, where there's giant armies and factions of people that have their own political agendas and a giant world that has to unite and fight some of these ancient evils. And in fact, some of the more recent World of Warcraft expansions have kind of downplayed that, where I think Blizzard's gone on record as saying, like, we can't keep releasing a game that every time it's like, okay, guys, now this giant thing is threatening the world. Okay. But a lot of the very early World of Warcraft expansions were very much like that. And it's basically, if you took Lord of the Rings and mixed in just a little bit of, like, steampunk as well, that's essentially the Warcraft universe. Basically.
Interesting. Now, I've listened to like previous episodes of your podcast, Midwest Nerds, for people who want to check it out. And you mentioned, at least somebody mentioned on there, that they went back, they decided that they didn't like a game, and they almost resorted to playing Warcraft again. And there was some chuckling. Does that mean that it's not as popular as it once was, and they're kind of like hitting after maybe the fans might care?
Well, I think there's definitely some of that. Like, World of Warcraft was probably, I think it's probably something that will never happen again as far as like its peak player base. I would almost compare it to like in television, MASH's finale,
Oh,
like
yeah,
where
certainly.
That was a sort of televised event that will probably never happen again. And even if I think there were like numbers that came out, like a Superbowl recently actually did finally beat those numbers. But I think just by sheer, it's not the same. It's not a shared fiction event. It's kind of just, it's this thing that's happening. Like, these people are passing a ball around and yay, but I think that the World of Warcraft is very much like that. That yes, there aren't as many people playing the game anymore, but I think that's because the realities of the video game, the video game marketplace have changed so much that you're not going to have a single game come out and have that many people all at one time, all paying $15 a month just for the experience, because World of Warcraft was kind of the first game to bring together all of this stuff that had come before and really perfect the formula. It kind of dominated multiplayer online gaming for the better part of almost a decade.
Interesting. So, film's set to come out around 2015. Obviously, we haven't seen anything from it because they just announced a director. But how would you gauge your enthusiasm for this World of Warcraft movie after all you've told us?
Well, I would say from the perspective of like a fan, if they do it right, I'm pretty excited about it and about the possibilities that they could have with this. Now, that said, I have to temper that as the opinion of a video game fan and a lifelong video game fan who has seen just disappointment after disappointment as far as video game film adaptations. For whatever reason, we haven't had our Burton Batman yet, where we haven't had the film that's really said, oh, you know what, this type of fiction can actually work on the silver screen. Like, nobody's really pulled together those elements and done it quite right yet.
But at the same time, you have to think, maybe you don't know, but there isn't like an auteur director. Duncan Jones is still pretty young in the craft, but nobody has taken a video game and turned it into what could be considered art. It's all been popcorn films, and Duncan Jones, at least at this point, has been pretty complex and pretty steady with what he's delivered. So does that give you some sort of hope that it will be done justly?
Yeah, I think so. I think it really is. I mean, you make a really good point that I think it's really all about having the right pieces together to make it work. And I don't think any studio has really actually bet good money on a video game franchise. They've just gone like, yeah, we'll have this dude do it, or Uwe Boll do it, which we all know how that works.
Of course.
And so I think, yeah, this is, if there's a big name director like, or at least somebody with some cred, behind this project, then I think that says something, and I think that says that at least they've got some faith in the project and what it could possibly do. So that does give me a little bit more hope.
And another thing on top of that is not to just ruin the party right away, but Peter Jackson, wasn't he attached to Halo? And we all know how that went.
Yeah. Maybe we shouldn't put too much credence in a director announcement, but still, it's some reason to be entertained. I know Sam Raimi was attached to a Warcraft film for the longest time, and just knowing his sensibility opposed to Duncan Jones, who's only done this kind of intimate sci-fi at this point, Raimi seems to be more in the wheelhouse from what Burns described, but I'm still excited about anything Duncan Jones does. So, Burns, I want to thank you for joining us here on Filmcast Without a Cause.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you?
You can find our show at www.midwestnerds.com. We put out shows every month, and we talk about a lot of this kind of stuff, video games, nerd culture, and lots of cool tech. Anything that makes us nerd out quite a bit.
And before we let you go, what's your favorite Die Hard movie?
Ooh, what's my... I actually... God, I don't know. I would... That's tough. I'd probably have to go with the original Die Hard. You always got to go with an original.
That is pretty hard to go against.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for joining us.
You bet, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. And if you want to join the show like Jason just did, all you need to do is call the FWOAC phone. That's 515-412-0737. You can comment on the news, give us your thoughts on whatever FWOAC Franchise Flashback we're doing, or the film of the week, the feature review. If you want to be on the show, that's the best way to get in touch. But without further ado, let's move on to our feature review for the week, the documentary Sound City.
When we showed up at Sound City, what is this place? Because I don't know that we can make a record in here.
When you walk into Sound City, you either love it or hate it.
Looks kind of dumpy.
Brown shag carpet on the wall. That's the kind of thing that you would do to your van.
Tucked away in San Fernando Valley sits a desolate rock landmark, Sound City Recording Studios. While it may be gone, Dave Grohl refuses to let it pass without music fans knowing of its importance.
But walking down the hallway and seeing all of those platinum records on the wall, that's what I'm talking about.
Tom Petty,
Fleetwood Mac,
Neil Young, man.
Cheap Trick,
Chili Peppers,
Pat Benatar,
Guns N' Roses.
Nine Inch Nails, Foreigner,
Rat.
Johnny Cash.
Metallica.
Dude, how many music albums have been made there?
We chose Sound City because Nevermind was recorded there.
Once upon a time, there was a recording studio that recorded some of the biggest albums in modern rock and roll history. Not Abbey Road, Sun Studios, Motown, or Electric Lady Studios. We're talking about Sound City, an analog champion in Los Angeles' San Fernando Valley. So does a studio that isn't known to the general public for its contribution to rock and roll worthy of a feature-length documentary film? Dave Grohl, frontman of the Foo Fighters and drummer for Nirvana, says yes. It's no secret that Sound City went out of business. It's right there in the trailer. What is a secret is a torch a handful of famous rock acts hold for this bygone recording studio that never caved to the revolution of digital recording. So Jacob, as our resident documentary filmmaker and someone I know who's seen almost all the documentaries out there, that's a little much.
Yeah, no, don't put that burden on me.
Does the reverence these musicians hold for a dead studio engage your cinematic senses, or did you find the romantic musings of faded rock stars trivial?
Oh, well, I wouldn't go so far as to say trivial, but I can honestly say I don't think I'm nearly as enamored with Sound City as Dave Grohl is. But I think it's not possible that anyone can love Sound City as much as Dave Grohl. Obviously, this is a passion project, and that may be a little bit of the problem. Obviously, he uses everything in his power. He puts in a lot of money in this film. It has super high production values. It's very well shot, animations and graphics, and he probably pulls in a lot of favors. He gets a lot of famous musical friends. But I just don't think the story of this place sustains a feature-length doc.
Oh,
and,
you're absolutely right.
And there's reasons I'm sure we'll get into, but before I get into that, I just want to hear how this landed with you.
Well, as somebody who has bought several like rock and roll documentaries that just go for bands like such as The Clash and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, I would say that this isn't even like a really good rock and roll documentary. It's got some behind the music style stuff that goes on, but the last 40 minutes of this film, just to cut straight to the chase, is completely tagged on, and almost in a way that there was something there that could have made it work a little better, but it's really just a bunch of guys in a recording studio at that point talking about writing music and not anything to do with Sound City. And I don't know. It's hard because I'm someone who, for the longest time, over 15 years, said that the Foo Fighters were my favorite band, and I would love anything Dave Grohl put out there. And over the last few years, that's been tested. And I would say this movie, it starts out pretty strong, but even at the height of it, in the first 70 minutes, where it's telling the story and the rise and fall of the studio, it's a pretty loose narrative, and it strains to keep your attention at times.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to point out is it has the thing that happens in a lot of entertainment docs where there's a series of talking heads, the Greek chorus, if you will, who just say names, and they each get to say like a name each, and they, in succession, and it just becomes a cacophony of words to tell you why this thing is so great. And they're talking about Sound City, and they're talking about all the different artists that are in Sound City, or came to Sound City, rather. And they say Rick Springfield twice, And some of the people that they have like listing off the names are the people from the band. They just have a shot of Trent Reznor saying 9 Inch Nails. You know, he's probably not saying it in the context of that. So I don't know. That was just a little thing that perturbed me. But frankly, there's just not enough film here. I mean, there is too much film in a way. It's an hour and 45 minutes, which is long for an entertainment doc, I think.
But there's just not enough content.
Yeah, enough content. And the final 45 minutes is basically a promo for this tie-in CD that I think he's recording. I guess because of his love, it's kind of all a wrapped-in project, I guess. But if it was like waved through as a framing device, maybe it wouldn't have stuck out so poorly. But as it is, it's like an hour of Sound City history and then 45 minutes of them recording this CD. And it's repetitive and it's self-indulgent a little bit. Even when there are interesting moments in that.
Yeah, it's interesting in that last 40 minutes, too, because they spend a lot of time with Trent Reznor and Rick Springfield recording songs, and then Paul McCartney shows up. And that might be the only time in that past 40 minutes where you start to care again about, oh, my goodness, this is Paul McCartney. I think a better, smoother transition might have been if as soon as Sound City dies, they cut to the part where Dave Grohl says, you know, I didn't do this just to tell the story of Sound City. I did it because I fell in love with that board and it made me who I am. And then bam, punch in the face with Paul McCartney, because that would almost give you some transition to somebody who's worked in the recording industry for 6 decades or 5 decades at this point, you know, to kind of say, you know, I've seen a ton of Paul McCartney could say he's seen a ton of recording studios come and go, and that would be a bridge into a different type of narrative, not just Sound City. But you're right, it does go into the, hey, wait for this album and tour that's going to hit you in a month.
And they don't interview Paul, which I understand why you don't interview Paul, really, because one, he's probably super busy and above it, and he didn't have anything to do with Sound City. But as it is, where he's placed in the film, there's a lot of justifying to explain why he's there. That if they would have done what you just explained, that sounds like a good solution to me. It wouldn't have felt so shoehorned in. But as it was, those final 40 minutes or whatever, that's not the film I signed on for in the first hour.
Absolutely. And the funny thing about it is, a close analogy to this might be Anvil, the story of Anvil, where they talk to all these people in the film, and I think that's a much better documentary than this.
Yeah.
And in that movie, they have all these rock people that are talking about how Anvil could have, you know, was just close to making it, and they're almost puffing up the history of this band just to make it sound that much better. You got to think that they contacted several people, like Sound City, who gives a flip about that crummy old studio, because these people are making it sound like it's Valhalla. But at the same time, I remember Slash, or maybe it was Lars in the Anvil movie, he said, you know, we can say all we want about how great this band is, but at some point you gotta wonder, why didn't they make it? And the reason Anvil didn't make it is because the lyrics and the vocals aren't there, and it's subpar musicianship. You gotta wonder if somebody at some point didn't tell Dave, something along those lines, and they just didn't put it in there.
Yeah, it seems to really glorify this place, and it fetishizes this soundboard that's in the movie, and that's the place that makes Sound City. They come to Sound City for the soundboard, and that's what Dave Grohl put into his studio to bring all these other people. But it kind of doesn't answer the question that if it was so much cheaper to go to Pro Tools or whatever, why didn't Sound City at least enter? We learned that there are multiple studios in Sound City too. It's in the Fleetwood Mac story, so they could have put in a Pro Tools one, but they were just being stubborn and they went out of business, I guess. But that's not a theme in it. It's just basically about why analog is more pure than digital, and in that respect, I don't think the film personally told me anything I didn't already know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even in the movie, if you hear Neil Young go on about how like the devil and digital, in the telling of this movie and promoting it, Dave Grohl is said several times he is not against digital. It's a great thing. It lets people who don't have the means or the money get discovered and write their music. And there's some conflicting message there. I think if I was going to take something positive back from this, I think that it kind of, to me, feels like the movie The Sandlot for rock and rollers, like this reverence for a day gone by and a coming of age story for, coming up in rock and roll. There's a point that kind of, the story turns a little sour after somebody says, you can only be when you're in your 20s, you never think it's going to end. And at the same time, these people in their heyday probably never thought it was going to end. And then bam, here comes digital.
Yeah. And there are some good moments, legitimately interesting moments. One moment I would call great as a fan of Grohl is he's drumming to Smells Like Teen Spirit, and we only hear the drums, and then they start intercutting the footage from the music video. And this is set in the studio where he first laid down that drum track. I found that a good moment. I liked Trent Reznor jamming with Grohl and the guy from Queens of the Stone Age, Josh Homme, or however you say his name. Those are little moments I liked, but it just didn't justify the hour 45 to me.
Yeah, and the part with Smells Like Teen Spirit and Chris Novoselic when they were talking about Nirvana, it almost made me think this film might be a way of saying, I'm open to doing an authorized documentary or even feature film on the band, because you've never seen that in a documentary involving these two guys, and they talk just distinctly about that album. So there's something in there there's little bits and pieces that will get to you, even if you say you don't care about the Heartbreakers.
Yeah, I think it's dependent on your music interests, and if there will be a little something for everyone, but maybe you have to have a pretty diverse taste in rock and roll, I think, to enjoy the full thing.
So we're both, sounds like, on the side of not saying you need to see this film or check it out while it's in theaters. Maybe down the line, if you have a spare afternoon and don't know what to do, check it out then.
Yeah, personally, I would say wait until you can see it cheaper than what the on-demand price is at the moment, which is around $10. I would say it's a Red Box rental or a Netflix stream, if anything. Sound City is unrated, but it does have some adult language, and it's available on demand and in some cities. When we come back, we will continue our FWOAC Franchise Flashback of the Die Hard series with Die Hard with a Vengeance. Keep listening. New on DVD this week, the week of February 5th, Celeste and Jesse Forever, a film we reviewed right here on FWOAC. You can find that episode where you can find the rest of our episodes at filmcastwithoutacause.com. That is our website, right?
That is correct.
All right, great. Also out this week, Flight, the Robert Zemeckis film with Denzel Washington, an Oscar nominee. Here Comes the Boom, and a documentary that kind of reminds me a little bit, possibly, sight unseen, of Sound City, which we just got done talking about, Side by Side. Do you know about this, Doc?
No, I do not. What is it?
It is about the transition of film to digital, and it features Keanu Reeves doing a lot of interviews with famous filmmakers about how they feel about it.
Interesting. Is Keanu Reeves on the side of one or the other?
I don't know. I have a feeling he's more of an analog guy, even though he was a Matrix guy. But with film being my interest more so than music, I actually do want to see Side by Side. I know Scorsese's he's in there. So, interested in Side by Side. And we missed it last week. The Sessions came out on DVD. Just wanted to mention that. Speaking of things on DVD, what I have watched recently, that's what we usually talk about, random recommendations and ramblings, mind you. I've been pretty busy with I'm TAing a class, as I've mentioned. I've had to see Blade Runner 3 times this past week.
Oh my goodness.
I'm a little sick of it, actually. And it's never a film I've loved, but I always appreciate Blade Runner, and even repeated viewings, and some of those are with commentaries, so it's not the same experience over and over. But
have you been watching different cuts? Do you have one you prefer at this point?
No, I've only been watching the final cut, because that's the one that had the commentaries on it, and I wanted to be consistent, because I just want to make sure... Like, we come up with quizzes to make sure the students watch the film and have to make sure it's the same cut. Maybe they cut the owl out of the director's cut. I don't know. Then I couldn't use that question. And this week we're doing Full Metal Jacket, which I just rewatched, and I liked a lot more than I remembered liking it. That's actually... I had written it off as lesser Kubrick, but it's a pretty good film.
I just saw on online that the guy who played Cowboy did a diary during the filming, and he has an app on Apple that you can download and read his diary from the film.
Oh, interesting. Matthew Modine?
Yes.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out, or tell the students that is available. And also, I was on kind of a kick with Korean cinema after The Last Stand, so I checked out Thirst from the director of Old Boy, Park Chan-woo. And that is a pretty intense vampire film, kind of if you one of those people that want a vampire romance but hate Twilight. Thirst is the opposite of Twilight, as opposite as it can get, even though it has some weird similarities involving carrying the human around and jumping around a little bit. Reminded me of Twilight. But I recommend Thirst if you're someone who I don't know if I would say that's the first Korean extreme, quote-unquote, extreme cinema film you should check out, but if you're interested in vampires, it's definitely one you should check out. And finally, before I toss it off to you, Pat, I saw an Oscar nominee on Netflix, Five Broken Cameras, nominated for Best Documentary. And like How to Survive a Plague, it mainly consists of home video footage. This is a man who, his small town is being taken over. He lives in the West Bank, and his small village is being taken over by people immigrating into Israel, and it's a nonviolent protest, and he follows it over the course of many years, and his camera breaks 5 times. Spoiler alert. But I have no idea which doc is going to win this year, having seen now I think 3 of the 5 nominees. It's anyone's game, I think.
Interesting. That's generally not the case, it seems like, in previous years.
If I'm going to put money, it's going to be the one I haven't seen, Sugar Man. So Searching for Sugar, or one of the 2 I haven't seen, Searching for Sugar Man. What did you check out on DVD this week, Pat?
Oh, well, sadly enough, I didn't have much time to watch movies. So Marita and I watched Julie and Julia, and beyond that, I spent most of my time watching television shows. But there are connections to movies. I'm on a big Deep Space Nine kick right now, Star Trek, for those who don't know what DS9 is. And there's a great episode that's basically just a complete rip on The Thing, the movie The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. In that movie, they try and decipher if you're an alien or a human by cutting yourself to reveal your blood. Well, they try to reveal in this episode if somebody's human or not based on if they're on their blood. And then there's another episode that is pretty much the idea of like it's trapped in a cave by some people and you have to make your own escape. It's kind of like a precursor for the Iron Man movies, but of course that was part of the lore. I think at the same time, was that the original story of Iron Man, or was that made in future comics?
I don't know if it was a cave, because that was kind of when they adapted it to Afghanistan, but he was a prisoner of war, I believe in the Korean War in the 1960s Iron Man. But which character in Deep Space Nine had to build an Iron Man suit?
That would be Chief O'Brien and Captain and Dr. Bashir. They were trapped on a planet that was being held hostage by the Jem'Hadar. Wow, I'm sounding so nerdy right now. But they were kind of not building an Iron Man suit, but building something that would be able to stun their captors so they could run to their runaway ship. And it didn't work. But moving on, I also watched Kids in the Hall, and I've only seen a few episodes. But in the very first episode, there are some hilarious skits that are kind of like precursors for Black Swan and Inception. I'll put links on the site to those, but there's a pear dream sketch where a guy keeps waking up and his wife will say, "Was it the dream about the pear again?" And it's like dreams inside of dreams. It's hilarious. And the Black Swan ripoff is a Kids in the Hall sketch where somebody's in ballet school and they're training to be a dancer, and this little girl is so, she's the white swan. She's so perfect. But the person in charge is going to go with the black swan, this girl who, Kevin McDonald, who is smoking and just a complete waste of space. It's awesome. But I don't know if that's a complete one-to-one comparison because it's comedy, but okay. I do like the idea.
I love Kids in the Hall. Well, let's transition into our DVD segment where our listeners could play along the FWOAC Franchise Flashback and continue it with Die Hard with a Vengeance.
In the hands of a mastermind of terror.
I want to play a game with Lieutenant McLean.
What kind of game?
Simon Says.
The path to revenge leads straight to John McClane.
If we don't do it, this guy says he's going to blow up another public
place. Why me? What has he got to do with me?
I have no idea. He just said it had to be you.
It's nice to be needed.
NYPD Detective John McClane has to battle a killer hangover and a terrorist determined to send him on a dangerous scavenger hunt around the city in Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Simon Says, get to the payphone in Wall Street Station by 10:20, or the number 3 train and its passengers vaporize.
I'm not jumping through hoops for some psycho. That's a white man with white problems. You deal with it. Where the hell are you going, McClane? I know what I'm doing. Not even God knows what you're doing.
This guy wants to pound on you till you crumble.
Are you aiming for these people? No. Well, maybe that mime.
He wants you to dance to his tune and then kill you.
Oh, dear.
Original Die Hard director John McTiernan returns for the series' second sequel that, instead of putting Bruce Willis's wisecracking McClane in close quarters again, opens the series up to the whole of New York City for a game of Simon Says. In fact, Simon Says was the name of the original script, retrofitted into a Die Hard film. There's a few other things absent from the previous movies, including supporting cast members like McClane's wife and Reginald VelJohnson's Alan, and Alan's Twinkies. And instead we get Sam Jackson as Zeus, a Harlem shop owner who somehow gets mixed in with McClane and Simon's game. A lot has changed in the franchise between Die Harder and Vengeance, but before we get into whether Die Hard with a Vengeance feels like part of a series, I'll ask you to go back and share your personal history with 1995's Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Well, my personal history, I think I kind of revealed it when we talked about Die Hard, is I remember seeing it pretty much quickly after I saw the first film when I was in junior high. And it was kind of hard for me to get back to that original mindset because I used to say that it was my favorite one, and I still definitely respect it with the others. But I remember thinking it was the best of the series. The bizarre thing is I haven't watched this film since then, so it's probably been, oh my goodness, 15 years or more. And it's hard to imagine why I thought it was one of the best movies ever, but I still greatly enjoy it. Do you have a history that you know much better than I do?
This was the first Die Hard movie I saw, and I saw it again on Fox television, so without the language, and I'm sure the sandwich board that John McClane wears is different. And I remember really liking it, without even having seen, knowing what the Vengeance was about, because I hadn't seen Die Hard. I just liked the puzzles, and I liked Sam Jackson yelling, McClane! McClane! I can't do it. Maybe you can find the soundbite. But I just remember, thinking it was the bee's knees, and I'd probably seen it probably 10 years ago, but it had been a while. So to answer the next question of whether it was better or worse than I remembered, I'd have to say it is slightly worse. I don't know how you feel. I still think it's tons of fun, just a little bit more ridiculous than I remembered. And I'm maybe less forgiving today than I was whenever I saw it first on Fox 17 KDSM.
I agree.
How about you?
I sadly, I do agree. I don't like to use the word worse because, I'm no longer an impressionable 13-year-old kid who is enamored with, cars driving off of bridges. In fact, when I see that in movies, I almost always hate it. But this film, it's still extremely good. And while it's not confined to the original film, like you said, leading up, but The Vengeance follows the same model of a man and his wits doing everything that's available to him to save the day. And there's even something that's in this movie that isn't in others, but I'll maybe get to that in the next part. Speaking of the best part, that I would say it was probably the New York stage. And that's something that's kind of odd to hear me say, because, I kind of feel that New York City...
New York.
I don't hate it, but it's definitely overexposed in television shows and movies.
Okay.
So, this truly shows the difference between the first two movies and this one. Is another being that race relations. In the first movies, black, white, foreign people, none of that matters at all. But in this movie, that is pretty front and center with Zeus, who is the shop owner from Harlem. Generally, I don't like it when people generalize about races or genders from a movie, but it was interesting to see, Zeus's life experiences making him so standoffish and bitter about and suspecting of just white men in general. And he doesn't respect McClane from the get-go. Even worse, he's a cop. But McClane just kind of says, maybe you're the problem. And then he just keeps going about his business. He never really gives into that. So that's almost an element that you never saw in the other movies. What was your best part?
The best part, mine isn't nearly as interesting as yours. I would say any time that McClane and Zeus are in a car together, I just always think that's fun. I think this is probably my introduction to Sam Jackson, if I remember right. So, and I just remember them having a really good chemistry, and especially when they're in a car, Sam Jackson can yell at McClane. There's the fun scene of them driving through the park, and the physics of it don't make any sense, but it's still fun to watch, and that's when he yells, McClane! I can't do a Sam Jackson impression. I'm sorry. Maybe there's a filter for that in a soundtrack that we can find.
You mentioned the physics and everything, not to jump to the fourth movie, but I remember after seeing that having some issues with that. I almost wish I had seen Vengeance right after so I could say, oh, well, they've done it previously.
It's been established. Interesting. Well, so that's what the FWOAC Franchise Flashback's about, Pat. Being able to revisit these films in sequential order and see how they actually directly compare.
What about the weakest part?
Well, yeah, weakest part. It's that the plot is so ridiculous. It's the very thing that I loved about it in junior high. These puzzles. Today they seem the whole thing seems needlessly complicated. His vengeance scheme is so misguided. It's a wild goose chase, and ultimately, in theory, if what I think was supposed to happen would have happened, he would have gotten sniped. McClane would have gotten sniped at the baseball stadium or whatever, and it wouldn't have, like, how satisfying of a vengeance could that really have been?
Well, I think that, not to trample on that, but that obviously was the misdirect to make everyone in New York think it was a vengeance thing.
Oh, okay, but still, it's still cheap.
Yeah, there's a lot of those misdirects in this movie.
There's a lot of it. Yeah, I get that's the whole why he picked McClane, but I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little harsh on that. But what do you think is the weakest part?
No, I agree. It is over the top in those parts, and probably the worst aspect, personally for me, is the completely unbelievable Federal Reserve heist scene. You'd have to be a tween, as I was, to actually go believe that's how that could go down, as shown in the movie. Because people don't know this, but there's actually Marines, like an entire platoon of Marines guarding the Federal Reserve, because that's foreign money. That's not American money. So, I mean, it's pretty liberal with the storytelling, and what you were saying is right on track. But that scene alone, I remember watching it this time and thinking, there's only 6 guards in this whole bank? What's going on?
Well, is there anything else that resonated with you this viewing that you hadn't noticed before and previously watching it 15 years ago or whenever?
Yeah, well,
probably a lot.
I'd say probably that in this movie compared to the other ones, I never really noticed how in the airport or in Nakatomi Tower, he used every means of possible. You know, he's jumping into elevator shafts and riding on little luggage carts and things like that. And in this movie, he's using everything at his disposal in New York. You know, that must be a thing with these movies. You got to use transportation, because he's in the subway, he's in taxis, he's in a boat, and then he's at one point in a helicopter. So, I mean, the action is definitely more big, and it at times distracts. But I would say everything from maybe that very last scene is distracting as far as action goes. And that's the connection I made. Maybe you found something more.
Oh, no, this is a totally tiny thing, but I wouldn't have noticed it if I hadn't watched these in successive weeks. McClane, very early in the film, has a gun taped to his back, and that's kind of a reference to the ending of the first movie. I never caught on to this when I'd seen it before, that he's hung over the whole time. And that's kind of, I think that's their way to kind of humanize him in this film, and it's kind of, they can't make him barefoot for the entire movie, but they can give him a massive hangover. So he's always asking for Tylenol, and he looks like crap the whole time, which I liked that a lot this time.
Well, I guess we're moving into the end here. Did this film need a sequel, and does this film add to the Die Hard mythology?
You know, it does. It continues his relationship with his wife, who's, and I don't know, 3, 2, 1. Let me do that again. It actually kind of shows McClane at his weakest point, which is an interesting thing to do in a trilogy. It was at one point a trilogy. He's broken up with his wife. He's no longer a super cop. He's on probation. It was an interesting place to set it in the third movie. And I think once with and it was a way to establish that like I said with Die Harder, you can plop John McClane in any action movie plot, and it's now a Die Hard movie, and I think that's what this film does as well.
I mean, personally, and my take on it was this film doesn't need a sequel, but I think this would have actually worked maybe better if they wanted to set up a franchise as the second movie. Earlier on in the FWOAC Franchise Flashback, I mentioned that there's like almost a connection to like Taken that I was going to bring up, and that's in the first movie he goes and does something that, you know, causes all this strife, and then he gets attacked in the second movie by the family and other Albanians. And in this movie, it's Simon, that being Hans Gruber's brother, comes back and, you know, comes after him, or at least uses him to pull off a heist similar to his brother. And I kind of felt like that's a good setup and a natural way to go from point A to point B. And then maybe the airport could be point C, because that would open it up to, okay, we're going to have this guy just to fight any type of terrorist, like you said, like plop him in any action movie. So I don't know. I think kind of feels like it wraps up his story in this movie, not leaves it open for a fourth. I'll leave my opinion on the fourth one till the next one, but I don't know if it needed to have a sequel.
No, not at all. So where would you rank Die Hard with a Vengeance in the franchise?
It used to be my number one, and watching these again, I can't say that. I can't be the guy who's a contrarian. It's number 2 behind Die Hard. Do you argue with me? Is it number 3?
No, I would still much rather watch this than Die Harder, but it's come to the point where I've established nothing. Die Hard is one of the best action movies, so it's number 1 with a bullet, but this is a solid number 2.
Well, I noticed online, just something to FWOAC about here, that it's the 25th anniversary of the original Die Hard coming out in 1987 or 88, whenever it came out, and there obviously is going to be a good day to Die Hard, which we're leading up to with these reviews. And in Los Angeles, a 25th anniversary mural was put on the studio's wall, like a soundstage. It's huge, and it's John McClane crawling through the vent in the first film, and
it's gorgeous.
It is, and it's probably stroking Bruce Willis's ego. Maybe that was part of it. They said, we're going to roll out the red carpet if you do this film for us. But I'll share this on the page and a link to where it came from. But it's kind of crazy to think John McClane, he's got to be well into his 50s at this point. He's still battling the terrorists.
There's one short Die Hard with a Vengeance thing I want to add before we wrap up here. Have you seen the alternate ending for Die Hard with a Vengeance?
No. Is it online or on a DVD?
It might be online, and if so, we should put it on the website, but it's definitely on the DVD and on the Blu-ray. It has a totally different tone than what happens. The ending is if the rediscovery of the bottle doesn't happen or whatever, the whole thing at the warehouse does not happen. He gets away with it. Jeremy Irons' character does. And John McClane goes to this little island. It's set in like a restaurant or a bar or whatever, and confronts him. And apparently McClane's life is totally ruined. He's fired from the task. It's really dark. It's a really dark, and the tone is something more out of a Tarantino movie than Die Hard with a Vengeance. So that is something definitely worth checking out for curiosity factor.
Interesting. Well, before we wrap it up, let me just real quick, who's your favorite villain so far? Or rank the villains.
It's the same as the movie. Gruber, whatever, Jeremy Irons' character, Gruber 2, and Sadler. How about you?
Yeah, that's true. But I'd have to say that Simon, Jeremy Irons' character, is pretty fun. And I kind of enjoy the whole Simon Says rhyming and riddles.
Well, if you are, I know the screenwriter for this wrote a movie starring John Cena called 12 Rounds, which basically has the same concept. I haven't seen it. But fans with Die Hard with a Vengeance should check it out, maybe. That film, Die Hard with a Vengeance, is rated R for strong violence and pervasive, strong language. It is on DVD and Blu-ray. When we come back, we are finally going to wrap up this FWOAC. Keep listening.
Okay, FWOAC fans, if you want to be part of the show, I mentioned it earlier, there's a few ways to do it. Let's get into the details. You can hit us up on Twitter, Filmcast WOAC. If you want to hit us an email, it's filmcastwoac@gmail.com. If you leave a comment on filmcastwithoutacause.com, we will make sure that comment gets read on the show. And last but certainly not least, my favorite, give us a call if you're brave enough. Leave your thoughts on the phone. If you want to yell at me or Jacob or maybe even Jason for liking Warcraft, I don't know. We'll get the message to him. We'll put it in the show. Just please keep it PG rated or, at least friendly. Our phone number for the FWOAC phone is 515-412-0737. That's how you get in touch with us. Jacob, what's coming out and what will we be reviewing?
February 8th. It's still February, so, it's still slim pickings. But we have Identity Thief, the newest film with Jason Bateman and I can't remember her name, but she's Melissa McCarthy, from the director of that Bosses film. Did you ever see Horrible Bosses, Pat? Did you?
I reviewed it for our old job.
Yeah,
and
maybe we reviewed it together. It has not held up well in my memory.
Not in mine either. I was actually down on it when I saw it, but I think that's Jason Bateman's fault.
Yeah. Side Effects, Top Gun 3D, and also in limited release, A Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charles Swan III. That's been on demand for the past couple weeks. And A Liar's Autobiography, The Untrue Story of Monty Python's Graham Chapman. I know we have some Monty Python fans who listen. I think someone told me that might already be on Netflix, so save yourself a trip to the theater, maybe. We will be reviewing Side Effects, which I know absolutely nothing about other than who's directing it.
Oh, well, then I'll just leave you in the dark. That's probably the best way to see most movies.
But it is directed by Steven Soderbergh, and this may be his theatrical swan song. He said he's going to retire after this and the HBO movie about Liberace. So I'm down for anything Soderbergh, so I'm glad I don't know anything about it. I've somehow been able to avoid trailers, and even I'm not even 100% sure who's in the cast. So I'm going to try and go in blind. That shouldn't be too hard.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I'll leave my thoughts about Steven Soderbergh's retirement till next week.
All right. For Filmcast Without a Cause, I'm Jacob Rosdale.
And I'm Patrick Boberg.
Thanks for listening.
That's a wrap.
I'm finished.